The Ethal Dominion, an empire whose war banners had cast shadows over thousands of conquered worlds, prepared to do what they did best: eradicate resistance and claim dominion over another helpless planet. Earth was their next target. Until they received the message. It wasn't a plea. It wasn't a surrender. It was a warning. We know what you are. We know how you think. We have already won. Seconds later, the Dominion's invasion fleet halted in place. For the first time in their empire's history, they hesitated. The fleet loomed at the edge of the Sol system, a black tide blotting out the distant stars. Commander Ksharak stood on the bridge of his flagship, arms folded across his chest as he watched Earth spin slowly in the void. Just another world. Just another conquest. The Ithal Dominion had broken the backs of 1,000 species. Humanity would be no different. "Admiral," one of his officers reported, "we are receiving a transmission. Encoded. High priority frequency." Ksharak didn't bother to glance at him. "Let me guess. A last plea for mercy? Or a foolish threat?" The officer hesitated. "It's Sether." That got his attention. Ksharak turned, eyes narrowing. "Put it through." A crackle. Then a voice. Smooth. Measured. Unshaken. "We know what you are. We know how you think. We have already won." Silence swallowed the bridge. The Ithal were not an empire easily unsettled, yet there was something about those words, something cold. Calculated. Ksharak's jaw tightened. "Find the source." His technicians scrambled, fingers flying over control interfaces. "Admiral," one of them murmured. "This is impossible." Ksharak growled. "Elaborate." "The message, it's buried inside our own network." That wasn't possible. The Dominion's battle systems were impenetrable, layered in firewalls designed by the greatest minds in their empire. No species had ever breached them, let alone one as primitive as humanity. Then the data screens flickered. Strategic projections. Fleet deployments. Ithal war doctrine, every attack pattern, every calculated maneuver laid bare. It was as if humanity had reached into their minds and pulled out their very thoughts before they could act on them. Then came the final line. "We have defeated you before. We will defeat you again." Ksharak felt something twist in his chest, an alien sensation he had never known in all his years of war. A thing his species was never meant to feel. Doubt. "Cease all advance," he barked. "Initiate counter-cyber warfare. Trace the source." Technicians scrambled, working in tandem, but every attempt to break through the digital assault failed. "They're inside our system," one of them whispered. "Watching us. Listening." The words left a bitter taste on Ksharak's tongue. He had always seen war as a predictable equation, overwhelming force crushing lesser beings beneath his heel. Yet here was a species that did not plead. Did not bargain. They simply stated a fact. They had already won. On Earth, deep beneath the surface in an unmarked black site bunker, Commander Gabriel, grim, Draven leaned back in his chair, watching the Dominion fleet stall on his monitor. A slow smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. "It worked," one of his operators whispered. "They actually stopped." Draven exhaled. "Of course they did." The AI interface beside him pulsed softly, its voice smooth, synthetic. "They are processing the inevitability of their failure." Draven ran a hand through his short-cropped hair, his expression darkening. "How much do they know?" "Enough to break them. But not enough to understand why." Draven nodded. That was the key. The Dominion believed they understood war. Believed they had fought every kind of enemy. But humanity was different. Because humanity fought wars in ways no other species could comprehend. "They'll try to retreat," the AI continued. "Fear is a foreign concept to them, but they are experiencing it for the first time." "Then let's make sure it sticks," Draven said. He turned to his communications officer. "Send the second message." The Dominion fleet barely had time to recover when the next transmission arrived. "Run!" Ksharak clenched his fists, his claws digging into his palms. Admiral, one of his officers murmured. What do we do? Chirac had never been asked that question before. He had always been the one giving orders, leading the charge. But now he stood before an enemy he could not see, could not predict. He made his decision. Fall back. The order rang through the fleet like a death knell. As the Ithal ships turned away, slipping back into the void, Draven let out a slow breath. The battle had been won before it even began. But deep in his gut, something still nagged at him. The AI had spoken of inevitability. Of failure. Of memory. Draven turned to the interface. What aren't you telling me? The AI hesitated. Just for a fraction of a second. Then, a new screen flickered to life. An archive. Older than recorded history. Buried deep within it, a single phrase appeared. The war never ended. We just made them forget. Draven's blood ran cold. The Ithal were not the first. And they would not be the last. The Dominion had never retreated before. Their empire had stood for over 1,000 years, undefeated, unchallenged. Yet here they were, their war fleet idling in space, staring at a planet they no longer dared to approach. Commander Chirac felt his throat tighten as he watched the display before him. Something was wrong. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. This species, humans, should have been crushed under their heel like all the others. Instead, they had stopped the invasion without firing a shot. Status report, he barked. His second-in-command hesitated. Sir, the Cyber Warfare Division has been unable to purge the message from our systems. Every attempt to delete it results in replication. The data is alive. Chirac bared his teeth. Explain. The officer swallowed. The transmission wasn't just a warning. It was an infiltration. They didn't just send us a message, sir. They are inside our fleet. They know everything. A ripple of unease spread through the bridge. Ithal officers, seasoned warriors who had burned worlds to cinders, exchanged nervous glances. Their confidence was shaking. Chirac refused to accept it. They are a primitive species. This is psychological warfare. Nothing more. His words were sharp, but his mind churned with doubt. How could a species that had never been encountered before possess detailed knowledge of the Dominion's war strategy? How could they predict every move, every tactic, every contingency? Then the second message arrived. Run! A single word. The lights dimmed as the ship's AI crashed, screens flashing erratic static before stabilizing again. Then the fleet's engines failed. Chirac's pulse pounded in his skull. Emergency reboot. Now. Technicians scrambled, their claws skittering against control panels as they tried to restart their systems. No response. One of the officers, young, proud, fearless, took a cautious step forward. Sir, the engines are online. They just won't move. A chill clawed up Chirac's spine. What do you mean they won't move? The officer gulped. Something is overriding them. We still have power, but we aren't in control anymore. Chirac stepped forward, staring at the main viewport. Earth sat in the void, distant, watching them. Then, the stars moved. Not literally. But for the first time in Chirac's life, it felt like he was the one being watched. A new signal pulsed through their communications, cutting into every open channel, no matter how deep the encryption. A voice, human, male, calm, unbothered by the presence of an entire war fleet. You're afraid. Good. That means you're starting to understand. Chirac's claws dug into the railing. Who are you? A pause. Then, with deliberate patience, the voice spoke again. The last warning you'll ever receive. The main view screen flickered. A data feed overtook their displays, scrolling too fast for the Ithal to process. Chirac caught glimpses, battle strategies, classified Dominion protocols, the private communications of his own high command. Then it got worse. Images of destroyed Ithal worlds flashed across the screen. Burning cities. Annihilated war fleets. But these weren't past battles. They were future predictions. One of his officers stumbled back, whispering, This isn't possible. A final line of text burned into the display, white against the black void. Your empire is already dead. You just don't know it yet. Then silence. Ksharak's throat tightened. His grip on power, on the reality of war as he understood it, was slipping away. No enemy had ever done this. No enemy should have been capable of this. And yet, here humanity was, standing without firing a shot, making the mightiest empire in the galaxy hesitate. He turned to his officers. Prepare for emergency retreat. The young lieutenant's voice shook. Admiral, do we even know if they'll let us leave? A horrifying realization sank into Ksharak's chest like a stone. They had come to conquer. Instead, they were asking permission to flee. For the first time, Ksharak understood what it meant to lose. The bridge of the Dominion flagship was silent. Not the silence of discipline or control, but something far worse. Something that Ksharak had never encountered before. The silence of fear. His warriors stood frozen, their gazes flicking between the malfunctioning controls and the empty blackness beyond the viewport. Their fleet, an armada of unstoppable warships, was locked in place, paralyzed, and they had no idea how or why. The human's voice echoed again through the ship's communication system. We gave you a choice. Ksharak clenched his fists. No species had ever spoken to the Dominion like this. Not in defiance. Not in power. Not in sheer, absolute certainty of their superiority. He stepped forward, his voice a growl. You believe you have won because of tricks and illusions? You think fear will stop us? A brief chuckle came through the transmission. Cold. Amused. Unimpressed. Fear? The voice let the words settle. You think this is fear? No. This is clarity. Ksharak's claws twitched at his side. We will burn your world. No matter what deception you play at, Earth will fall. The human didn't respond immediately. The pause was calculated, intentional. A predator letting its prey stew in its own words. That's the thing, Commander, the voice finally said. You think you're dealing with something you understand. A species with weaknesses. With fear. With limits. Static crackled, then a new image appeared on every screen on the bridge. Earth. Not as it was now. Earth as it had been eons ago. The planet was different, older, colder, under the grip of an ancient war. The footage was grainy, distorted by time, but the horror was unmistakable. Ithel officers stared in disbelief as they saw towering figures waging battle, not against each other, but against something else. Against an enemy that shouldn't exist. A war unlike anything in Dominion history. Entire continents burned. The sky itself cracked under the weight of weapons far beyond Dominion understanding. And then, a complete and total silence. The war ended. Not in victory. Not in surrender. In erasure. Everything was gone. No wreckage. No records. Only emptiness, as if the war had never happened at all. Yet here it was, displayed before them, clear as day. One of Ksharak's officers whispered, This isn't possible. That war. It predates our empire. Ksharak couldn't breathe. The human spoke again, voice even, steady. Controlled. You thought you were the first to try. Ksharak's mind raced, desperately searching for a logical explanation, but nothing made sense. The footage flickered. A single sentence appeared on every screen. They never left. Ksharak staggered back. His officers turned to him, their eyes wide with something no Ithal had ever shown him before. Doubt. The human continued. We didn't survive by chance, Commander. We survived because we were willing to do what no one else would. We buried them. We erased them. We rewrote history itself to keep the galaxy safe. A fresh wave of static. The ship's lights flickered violently. The human's voice dropped lower. But you made us remember. Ksharak's breathing turned sharp. This is a lie. A trick. But his own words rang hollow. A new transmission overrode all systems. Not human. Not Dominion. A voice that was wrong. It was static, broken syllables, echoes of something that had been dead for millennia. A forgotten enemy. A name no one remembered. A warning. The fleet's engines suddenly roared to life. Every warship jerked backward, an invisible force shoving them out of the Sol system. The last thing Chirac saw was Earth, still distant, still untouched. But not alone. Something was there. Waiting. Watching. The Dominion fleet vanished into the void. And Earth? Earth remained. The warship trembled as power surged back into its core. Alarms screamed across the bridge, and officers scrambled to make sense of the impossible readings. Chirac gripped the console, his breathing ragged, his mind clawing for stability against the unraveling of everything he had ever known. Status! His voice was sharp, commanding, desperate. An officer turned, eyes wide, disbelief carved into his features. The fleet is being pushed, Admiral. We are being removed. By what? Chirac's stomach coiled with rage, but there was something else in it now. Something he refused to name. We don't know, the officer whispered. The human's voice returned, clear, steady, utterly devoid of fear. We let you leave. Chirac snarled, slamming his fist against the console. You have no power here, human! You are nothing but a new signal cut through his words. A second voice. Not human. Not Dominion. Something else. It wasn't speech. It was wrong. A distortion. A frequency his mind rejected but could still understand. A whisper from the past. A language his species should never have known. A warning. The bridge went deathly silent. No one dared to speak. The words clawed through the ship's systems, etching themselves into their displays, their databanks, their very minds. You should not have come back. Chirac's hands trembled. What is this? Another officer, seasoned, battle-hardened, backed away from his station. Admiral, this is a trick. It must be. But the officer's voice wavered. Because he didn't believe it. Because the ship itself was reacting. The hull groaned as though something unseen was brushing against it. Energy readings spiked into impossible ranges. A third transmission came through. A final one. From Earth. You woke something up. The ship lurched as if struck by an unseen force. The lights flickered, the air turned thick, heavy, as though space itself was watching them. Chirac spun toward his officers. Full retreat, now! The crew did not hesitate. The Dominion fleet turned and ran. Not in formation. Not in discipline. They fled. Because for the first time in their history, they had no enemy to fight. No battle to win. Only something they should never have disturbed. Something that had been waiting. And watching. And now, it was awake. The Ithal fleet tore through space at impossible speeds, retreating in a frantic, disorganized frenzy. Orders meant nothing now. Formation was abandoned. Protocol was discarded. There was no strategy for what they had encountered, because no war doctrine had ever accounted for running from a nightmare. On the bridge of the Dominion flagship, Chirac stood motionless. The walls around him pulsed with red warning lights, his officers scrambling to control systems that refused to obey. The engines were at full burn, but something followed them. Something unseen. Something wrong. The sensors couldn't track it, but every officer on board felt it. An oppressive, suffocating weight pressing against their skulls, filling the empty void of space with a presence that should not exist. Chirac's claws dug into his palms. He had never felt helpless before. He had never run. But what else was there to do? One of his officers gasped, eyes locked onto the viewport. Sir? Chirac turned, and for the first time in his life, he understood what true terror looked like. Space itself warped. A ripple of darkness. A tear in reality. Something moved within it. Not a ship. Not a fleet. Not anything that should exist. It wasn't light, it wasn't shadow. It was absence. A hole in the universe, vast and hungry. The Dominion fleet was not fleeing fast enough. Then the ship's communications crackled again. A transmission. Earth. The same voice. Calm. Cold. Final. This is your only warning. A pause. Do not return. Then the ship's systems flashed violently. Every console erupted with white noise. The power surged. The alarm screamed, and then, all at once, silence. The lights stabilized. The engines functioned again. Ksharak gasped, realizing he had stopped breathing. His officers collapsed in their seats, drained, broken. The absence was gone. The Ithal fleet had crossed the threshold, whatever boundary had marked the edge of the unknown. They were free. Ksharak turned to his crew. His warriors. His people. They looked defeated. Hollow. He straightened, forcing steel into his voice. We returned to High Command. No record of this event will be spoken of. This never happened. A lie. And they all knew it. No one replied. No one argued. Because the truth was clear. They had not spared humanity. Humanity had spared them. And whatever was down there had chosen to stay asleep. For now.